Hello and welcome back to my channel. Throughout history, there have been numerous instances of unethical and disturbing medical experiments conducted by governments and institutions. From the poison squad's forced consumption of dangerous additives to the Tuskegee Syphilis Study's deliberate withholding of treatment, these shocking events reveal a dark chapter in the pursuit of scientific progress. Join me as we explore the 5 most disturbing medical experiments and the dire consequences of prioritizing research over human rights and dignity. Number 1. The Poison Squad. In the early 20th century, the U.S. Department of Agriculture began a series of experiments known as the Poison Squad. These bizarre trials aimed to determine the safety of various food preservatives and additives that were becoming increasingly common in the American diet. The experiments involved recruiting a group of volunteers, mostly young male government employees, who were tasked with consuming foods laced with substances like borax, salicylic acid, and formaldehyde. The volunteers were nicknamed the Poison Squad, and were required to meticulously document their reactions, including any symptoms of illness or discomfort. The experiments were led by renowned chemist Harvey Wiley, who believed that many of these food additives were harmful to human health. He hoped that the Poison Squad trials would provide concrete evidence to support his campaign for stricter food safety regulations. The results of the experiments were often disturbing. Participants reported a range of unpleasant side effects, including nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and even in some cases, organ damage. In one particularly harrowing incident, a volunteer who had been consuming borax-laced food collapsed and nearly died. Despite the risks and discomfort endured by the Poison Squad, the experiments did ultimately contribute to the passage of the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906, a landmark piece of legislation that granted the federal government the authority to regulate the safety of food and drugs. The Poison Squad's sacrifices paved the way for important advancements in food safety and consumer protection. Today, the Poison Squad experiments are seen as a bizarre and unsettling chapter in the history of public health. They are a cautionary tale about the sometimes extreme measures taken in the name of scientific progress. Number 2. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study is one of the most egregious examples of unethical medical experimentation in American history. It was conducted by the United States Public Health Service from 1932 to 1972 and involved deliberately withholding treatment from hundreds of low-income African American men who had been infected with syphilis. The study originally aimed to document the natural progression of untreated syphilis. Researchers recruited hundreds of men, many of whom were sharecroppers, and told them they would receive free medical care. What the participants did not know was that they were intentionally being denied treatment even after penicillin had become the standard cure for syphilis in the 1940s. Over the course of the 40-year study, the men suffered severe health consequences. Many developed life-threatening complications like blindness, insanity, and cardiovascular disease. At least 28 participants died directly from syphilis, and an additional 100 passed away from related complications. Despite this, the researchers continued to actively prevent the men from seeking outside treatment. They went as far as to discourage them from seeking care and even blocking their access to medical benefits. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study finally came to an end in 1972 when a whistleblower revealed the unethical nature of the research, sparking public outrage. The revelations led to sweeping reforms in the ethical oversight of human medical trials. However, the legacy of Tuskegee continues to erode trust in the medical establishment, particularly among African American communities. This unconscionable experiment is a dark stain on the history of American medicine. It highlights the dangers of prioritizing research over human dignity and the basic rights of vulnerable populations. Number 3. The CIA's MKUltra Mind Control Program. The CIA's MKUltra program was a chilling and disturbing chapter in the history of American intelligence operations. Launched in the 1950s and spanning 2 decades, this secret program involved the CIA conducting a series of highly unethical experiments to develop mind control techniques. The MKUltra program involved unwitting human subjects, often vulnerable individuals such as mental health patients, prisoners, and sex workers. These were dosed with powerful hallucinogens like LSD without their knowledge or consent. The CIA researchers were convinced that they could use drugs, hypnosis, and other coercive methods to control the human mind and extract information from unwilling participants. The experiments conducted under MKUltra were nothing short of nightmarish. Subjects were held in secret CIA facilities, where they were subjected to sensory deprivation, torture, and relentless doses of LSD and other psychoactive substances. Many suffered severe psychological trauma, with some even meeting untimely deaths as a direct result of the experiments. Despite the best efforts of the CIA to keep the program under wraps, the truth eventually came to light in the 1970s. It sparked widespread public outrage and congressional investigations. The revelations about MKUltra demonstrated the lengths to which the agency was willing to go in pursuit of its misguided and unethical goals. It was willing to completely disregard the basic rights and dignity of the human beings it claimed to be protecting. The legacy of MKUltra continues to haunt the American psyche. It is a sobering reminder of the dangers of unchecked government power and the importance of ethical oversight in the realm of scientific research and national security. Number 4. The Montreal Experiments. The Montreal Experiments were conducted by the renowned psychiatrist Donald Ewan Cameron during the 1950s and 1960s. They formed a deeply disturbing chapter in the history of medical research. Cameron was the president of both the American Psychiatric Association and the Canadian Psychiatric Association. He used his position of authority to carry out a series of profoundly unethical experiments on vulnerable psychiatric patients. At the heart of Cameron's work were his theories about depatterning the human mind. He believed this could be achieved through a combination of sensory deprivation, drug-induced comas and electroshock therapy. Most patients admitted for routine mental health issues were subjected to these harrowing treatments without their informed consent. In the sensory deprivation experiments, patients were kept in isolation chambers for weeks on end, deprived of all external stimuli. This was followed by prolonged drug-induced comas, where they were kept unconscious for days or even weeks at a time. Finally, the patients were subjected to repeated, high-voltage electroshock therapy, often receiving hundreds of shocks over the course of their treatment. The results of these experiments were nothing short of catastrophic. Many of the patients suffered severe and permanent psychological damage, with some even dying as a direct result of the therapies they endured. Despite the clear harm being done, Cameron continued his work, even receiving funding from the CIA's notorious MKUltra program. The legacy of the Montreal Experiments reflects the dangers of unchecked power in the medical field and the crucial importance of ethical oversight and patient consent. The scars left by Cameron's work continue to haunt the victims and their families, underscoring the lasting impact of such egregious breaches of medical ethics. Number 5. The Human Radiation Experiments. The human radiation experiments were conducted by the United States government between 1944 and 1974. They represent one of the most disturbing examples of unethical scientific research in modern history. During this 3-decade period, hundreds of people, including children, were secretly exposed to high doses of radiation as part of various government research programs. These were conducted with complete disregard for their health and well-being. The experiments were carried out by a range of government agencies, including the Department of Defense, the Atomic Energy Commission, and the Public Health Service. Subjects were often drawn from vulnerable populations, such as hospital patients, prisoners, and military personnel, who were not fully informed about the risks they were facing. In some cases, children were even used as unwitting participants, with parents being misled about the true nature of the experiments. The experiments themselves varied widely in their methods and objectives, but all shared a common thread of disregarding the basic rights and dignity of the human subjects. Researchers exposed participants to radiation through various means, including full-body irradiation, injections of radioactive substances, and even the intentional release of radioactive materials into the environment. The consequences of these experiments were devastating. Many participants suffered from a range of health problems, including cancer, organ damage, and neurological disorders. In some cases, the exposure to radiation was fatal, with participants dying prematurely due to their involvement in the experiments. The revelations about the human radiation experiments in the 1990s sparked widespread outrage. It led to a series of congressional investigations and legal settlements. However, the scars left by these unethical practices continue to reverberate. They indicate the importance of ethical oversight and the protection of human rights in the realm of scientific research. These dark chapters in history highlight the need for robust oversight, informed consent and unwavering respect for human life in all areas of study. They also underscore the disproportionate impact such unethical practices have had on vulnerable and marginalized communities. While we've made significant strides in research ethics since these events, their legacy continues to impact trust in institutions today. We must remember these cautionary tales to ensure such violations are never repeated. If you found this video informative, please hit that subscribe button to stay updated on more bizarre events and informative topics. Don't forget to leave a comment sharing your thoughts on these experiments and their lasting impact. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.